Vanishing Whispers. The first thing Adam remembered was the sound of water dripping. It was faint, irregular, echoing somewhere beyond the reach of his vision. He was lying on his back, staring at a cracked ceiling that seemed to crumble under the weight of time. The room smelled of mildew and dust, the air heavy with a silence that felt both oppressive and intimate. He didn't know where he was. For a long moment, he lay there, trying to piece together the fragments of his memory, but they eluded him like shadows retreating from the light. There was nothing, just a blank void where his life should have been. He felt neither panic nor fear, only a numb detachment, as though the man he had been was someone else entirely. When he finally sat up, his head throbbed with a dull ache. The room was sparse, a wooden chair, a narrow bed, and a single window through which pale sunlight seeped like a hesitant visitor. Outside, he could see the faint outline of rooftops and chimneys, their shapes blurred by a dense fog. The city beyond seemed unreal, like a half-forgotten dream. On the table beside the chair lay a small notebook, its cover worn and frayed. Adam picked it up, flipping through the pages. They were filled with sketches, faces, buildings, abstract shapes, but no words. The faces were haunting, their expressions frozen in anguish or longing. He didn't recognize any of them, yet they felt familiar, as though they had been plucked from the corners of his subconscious. A voice from the past. The first time he heard the voice, he was walking along the riverbank. It was late afternoon, the sky streaked with gray and orange. The water mirrored the somber light, its surface rippling with the gentle movements of the current. Adam, the voice said, soft but insistent. He froze, turning around, but there was no one there. The path behind him was empty, lined with leafless trees whose skeletal branches reached toward the sky like desperate hands. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice trembling. No answer came, only the distant hum of the city. But the voice lingered in his mind, pulling at something deep within him. It wasn't the first time he had heard it. He was certain of that now. It had been there before, whispering to him in the moments between wakefulness and sleep, in the spaces between thoughts. That night, he returned to the room and opened the notebook again. He stared at the sketches, searching for clues, but they offered no answers. The faces seemed to mock him, their hollow eyes daring him to remember what he had forgotten. Fragments of a life. Days turned into weeks, and Adam wandered the city like a ghost. He drifted through narrow alleyways and crowded streets, his presence unnoticed by the people around him. He felt invisible, untethered, as though he existed on the periphery of reality. The voice came and went, always calling his name, always just out of reach. And then, one day, it gave him something more. Go to the old factory. The words reverberated in his mind, filling him with a sense of urgency he couldn't explain. He didn't know which factory, but his feet seemed to move of their own accord, leading him to the outskirts of the city. The building loomed before him, its windows shattered, its walls covered in graffiti. It was a relic of a bygone era, abandoned and forgotten. Adam stepped inside, the air thick with the smell of rust and decay. In the center of the factory floor stood a woman. She was facing away from him, her figure silhouetted against the dim light that filtered through the broken windows. "Who are you?" Adam asked, his voice echoing in the empty space. The woman turned slowly, and Adam felt his breath catch in his throat. Her face was one of the sketches from the notebook, a face he didn't recognize but couldn't forget. "You don't remember me," she said, her voice tinged with sadness. "No," he admitted, "I don't remember anything." She stepped closer, her gaze piercing. "You used to come here, long ago. You said this place reminded you of something you couldn't put into words. You said it felt like standing at the edge of a dream." Adam shook his head. "I don't understand. Who are you?" The woman hesitated, as though searching for the right words. "I'm someone you left behind." A flicker of memory. After the encounter, Adam's dreams became more vivid. He saw flashes of a life he didn't recognize, a childhood home with peeling wallpaper, a narrow staircase leading to a locked door, a field bathed in golden light. He saw the woman again, her face illuminated by the glow of a street lamp, her eyes filled with unspoken words. The memories came in fragments, disjointed and incomplete, like pieces of a puzzle he couldn't assemble. He began to wonder if they were even his memories at all, or if he was merely borrowing them from someone else. The voice grew louder, more insistent. It guided him to places he couldn't recall ever visiting. A cafe with red checkered tablecloths, a park bench overlooking a frozen pond, a small bookstore where the shelves seemed to stretch endlessly into the shadows. Each place held a trace of something, a scent, a sound, a fleeting sensation, that tugged at the edges of his consciousness. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't grasp the whole picture. The vanishing point. One evening, as the city was wrapped in darkness, Adam found himself standing on a bridge. The river below was black and still, its surface reflecting the faint glimmer of distant lights. The voice spoke again, but this time it was different. It wasn't calling his name. It was saying goodbye. He felt a strange sense of finality, as though he had reached the end of something he couldn't name. The notebook lay heavy in his pocket, its pages filled with faces and places that no longer seemed to belong to him. As he stared into the water, he realized that his memories, the fragments, the whispers, the fleeting images, were slipping away. He could feel them dissolving, like ink bleeding into paper, until there was nothing left. And then, for the first time, he felt a sense of peace. He turned away from the bridge and began to walk, his steps steady and purposeful. He didn't know where he was going, but it didn't matter. The past was a shadow, the future a blank canvas. All that remained was the present moment, fleeting and eternal. Adam disappeared into the night, his figure swallowed by the darkness, his soul a whisper carried by the wind.